Say, would you consider yourself a procrastinator? One of my listeners sure does. And so we'll talk about it on today's Pivotpreneur episode. Let's pivot.
Here we go. Pivot. Pivot. Pivot.
Well, hello everybody. I am Todd Stalker, your Pivotpreneur host and coach, and welcome to those of you listening on the podcast or those of you watching on the YouTube station. That's old. I just told you how old I was. YouTube channel. It is great to have you here. If you're new to our podcast is all about life and leadership and the pursuit of change. That's where we get the name, actually. Pivotpreneur comes from entrepreneur, but more so geared toward what is the process to make a very effective change in your life so your life can be better. So I'm just going to dive right in. We got a question that came in through our website, pivotpreneur.com. And if you are listening and have a question about life or something about leadership or the pursuit of change, any changes you want to make in your life, just go to pivotpreneur.com and hit the contact form, and you can just send a question in to me, and it might make the podcast like Amy's question did. And it has to do today with something we all struggle with on some sort of level, and it's this topic of procrastination. And this leads us into our quote, actually. Christopher Parker wrote, his quote says this: "Procrastination is like a credit card. It's a lot of fun until you get the bill." Boy, isn't that true? I don't know how many times I've procrastinated on something and scrambled to meet a deadline or get something in on time or ready to present or whatever it is. So it's something that happens to all of us. And so here's that question from Amy. She writes this: "Hi, Todd. I was going to ask this question a few weeks ago, but I'm just getting around to it, which is my problem." That's pretty funny, actually, Amy. "I feel like I'm a chronic procrastinator. It seems that every time I want to do something, especially something important, I find myself putting it off. For example, I have a cooking blog that I just started, and I'm trying to write 2 posts per week. But instead of writing my blog, I find myself fiddling with the logo or redoing my about page. Why do I procrastinate so much? Help," she writes. Well, Amy, if you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, you are not alone. Every single one of us, every single person procrastinates at some level. Some people that actually kind of drive me crazy, it seems like they don't procrastinate at all, but they do delay certain things. Others are what you call chronic procrastinators. I mean, I find myself putting off what I need to do on certain days and certain times, and it really comes down to my feelings about what I'm supposed to be doing. And so here's a very real-time procrastination issue for me is this podcast. So I have a master schedule for each of the weeks that I do a podcast. So any topics that I want to talk about or that the listeners want to talk about, I put those on this master schedule. And if you go to YouTube, I'll put up a picture of the actual master calendar. I call it Master Editorial Pipeline. And at the top, you'll see the publishing date, what date it's going to be published, the episode number, and then the different titles or themes of what I want to talk about week to week. And then I have kind of a checklist going across. So I have in one column, and this is just a Google spreadsheet. One column, it shows blog. The next column is recorded, edited, uploaded, published, and then a notes page. And so whenever I like last week was 4 ways to make the most of 2023. And so I did a blog. And so once I wrote it out, I checked that, then I recorded it, then I edited, it was uploaded and published. And then once I can look back and see, okay, I've gotten that whole thing done and published. So the very first column is the blog piece. That's the writing piece. Now, many of you who know me, have followed me over the years, you know that I am an author, that I do like to write. I blog pretty consistently on a couple of different blogs. But it's the hardest thing I do. I'm a Enneagram 7, so I really, really enjoy the speaking part of it and the creative processing of it, the editing piece. I love all those pieces. But if you look at my editorial pipeline, the very first column is the blog column, because I have to get that out of the way right off the bat, write down my thoughts, make it make sense so that you, the listeners, can learn and take your life to the next level. So Amy, you're not alone in that. There are so many other instances for myself that I can share with you of how I procrastinate. But getting a handle on procrastination is so important. Whether you're in school, and Amy, I don't know you, you might be in high school or college or school, whether you're at home, whether you're at work, if you are known for and find yourself to be a procrastinator, that is something that you really, really should take a focused look at. Understanding that in some seasons of life, some events that you encounter, you're going to procrastinate, but it's recognizing that and moving forward. So I looked up a couple of facts about procrastination, and I found a couple of different articles that I kind of summarized into one. So here are 9 facts about procrastination, and one secret that I found to really taking a step forward in beating procrastination. So here's 9 facts. I'm going to count them down, actually, starting with number 9. So number 9 fact about procrastination: approximately 20% of people consider themselves to be chronic procrastinators. Amy, you mentioned that. That means making procrastination a way of life. And this behavior affects all aspects of your life, including the ability to pay bills on time, failing to purchase tickets to a concert, never cashing gift certificates or checks, filing income tax returns late, even Christmas shopping at the last second. So if you're finding yourself over and over doing things at the last second like that and falling behind, you might be a chronic, what they call a chronic procrastinator. So that's one fact. That's number 9. Number 8 is this. Though often overlooked, procrastination is anything but trivial. You know, we kind of joke a little bit about, oh, well, I'll get around to it and those kinds of things, but it can have a significant impact on your life. It is a significant issue of self-control, and the U.S. may be particularly affected due to our tendency to be lenient on people's excuses, regardless of their accuracy. So we make excuses for our procrastination. So that's the 8th one. The 7th one, number 7 on our list, is there's a Dr. Ferrari. I like his name because I like the car. He said this: procrastination is not a time management issue. Rather, it is an emotional problem that is not solved by planning and scheduling. Procrastinators may be just as capable of estimating time as other people, but they are more likely to be overly optimistic, meaning I have so much more time, I could just do it later, and they don't put an urgency on getting these tasks done. Consequently, telling a procrastinator to buy a weekly planner is not a solution. It's akin to telling someone with depression to just cheer up. So procrastination is something that is real, and it is actually an emotional problem that's not solved just by planning. By the way, as an aside to this, I don't know if you knew this, but studies show that most of the tasks that you encounter, that you dive into, take less time than you think. Especially the tasks that you don't want to do, they take less time than you think. Okay, that was number 7. Number 6, procrastination is not an inherent trait. It is a learned behavior that is often a response to authoritarian parenting style. The key word in there is often, not always, because my parents were not authoritarian. They were loving, kind. Well, you can be loving and kind and authoritarian, but I mean, they allowed us a lot of freedom, but yet I still have elements of procrastination in my life. But with an authoritative parenting style, studies show that that kind of environment prevents children from developing the ability to regulate themselves. causing them to rely on external sources for support and motivation. So if you have a parent that's constantly saying, clean up your room, you need to get it done, and being very authoritative in that, it can lead to procrastination because the child is waiting for the strong parent or parents to tell them what to do next. Furthermore, those with procrastinating tendencies may find further reinforcement from their friends who may be tolerant of the excuses that we give. Okay, that's number 6. Number 5, procrastinators often lie to themselves in order to protect their self-image. They may tell themselves, and this might be you, Amy, you may tell yourself that you'll feel more motivated tomorrow or that they work best under pressure. However, in reality, they rarely find the motivation they were hoping for or an increased creativity they expect. Additionally, they may tell themselves that a certain task is not important in order to justify avoiding doing the task. In truth, procrastination often leads to wasted resources and missed opportunities. Now, again, all of these you have to take with a grain of salt because I'm a little bit different in this. I know that my best writing time and thinking time is in the morning. Anytime I wake up at 5 in the morning. So 5 until 10 or 11 is my best thinking time. There's another block of energy and focus time that I have that pops in at about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. But that morning time is key. So if I'm having to do something early morning, I'll often procrastinate on some of the harder tasks I have to do, the thinking tasks, and I'll put it off to the next morning. Now, that isn't necessarily justifying or making excuses, but I just want to do my best work, okay? So again, you have to take all of these kind of with a grain of salt, and you know yourself better than anyone else does. So that was number 5. Number 4, individuals, Amy, like you, who procrastinate, and me, who procrastinate. Individuals who procrastinate often seek out distractions as a means of avoiding commitment. Checking emails is a popular choice for procrastinators as it involves a distraction from fear of failure and other uncomfortable emotions. That's interesting. Amy, you said that you were fiddling with your logo, being some of the creative things rather than doing the blog posts. So those are distractions for what you actually really need to get done. Checking emails. A lot of companies have programs on the computers where you can't even check your email until a certain time in the morning, 10 o'clock, so you can be most productive. So number 4. Number 3, then, there are 3 distinct types of procrastination. This actually comes from Dr. Ferrari again, that car guy. So 3 different types of procrastination. Arousal types or thrill seekers who wait until the last minute for a rush of excitement. Yeah, you just put something off because you, quote, work better under pressure. Avoiders who are worried about what others think of them and would rather be seen as lacking effort than ability. Okay? Avoiders. So people who are worried about what others think of them and would rather be seen as lacking effort rather than ability. And then decisional procrastinators. This one is the largest group. Because they have difficulty just making decisions and then they avoid responsibility for the outcomes of the events. So those 3 are very, very key. 3 key ones, the thrill seekers, the avoiders, and then the decisional procrastinators. Number 2 on our list, the consequences of procrastinations are far-reaching and detrimental. I've said that several times. From a physical standpoint, and I didn't know this, those who procrastinate suffer from more colds and flu, gastrointestinal issues, and even insomnia. Beyond that, procrastination can cause resentment in others due to the burden of responsibility being shifted onto them. And it can ruin teamwork and personal relationships. These consequences make procrastination a very, very costly habit. I don't need to even comment on that. That is true. Other than the amazing, I didn't know that there was a physical effect to procrastination with colds and flu and different things. Probably with there's other underlying issues that happen, especially emotionally and mentally, that procrastination is just one of the pointers to something more deep. Okay, and the last one, number 1, drum roll please. Grrr. Changing procrastinatory behavior, that's a big word. Changing procrastinatory behavior may require a lot of mental effort, but it is possible with the help of guidance. So, and if you're new to the podcast and don't really know me, I am a coach. I coach leaders. I coach nonprofit leaders in church world, in business world, and oftentimes when somebody wants to accomplish something, or when somebody really feels the need to take their life to the next level, they procrastinate about it because it might take some hard work. And so having somebody come alongside of you is so key. And that's what I do as a coach. I don't try and fix your problems. I actually don't even try and figure out your next steps. But what I do is I come alongside you and help you accomplish the goals you want to accomplish that you've set out. So a little bit of accountability. So if you're interested in something like that, just go to pivotpreneur.com and send me a note. Okay, so a couple of things. How do you kind of overcome that procrastination stuff? Well, the first step is to evaluate areas in your life where you procrastinate and ask yourself why. Amy, again, you said when you're writing, instead of writing your posts, you tweak the logo and the website. So if you evaluate those two activities, they're different, Amy, aren't they? One is creative, the logo and getting the right color schemes and font schemes. And so one is creative, that's the logo, and one is concrete. And they're different parts of your brain, different sides of your brain. And so if you're hardwired, and you can take a free hardwired test at pivotpreneur.com, but if you're hardwired to be more on the creative side, of course you're going to be first drawn to those creative elements that you want to do on your blog and your website. I'm that way. I'm more of a creative than concrete thinking, and so I have to really be focused to get things done and not fiddle too much with logo. In fact, I actually just redid the logo for this podcast this morning instead of writing out what I really wanted to say. So I fell into it too. And one is concrete. Again, then the concrete piece is writing. Now, those people who are more concrete would probably gear toward the writing and have their logo or their website look a little bit shabby. So it's very, very real. And but that's a very key thing to do. Why is it that you're procrastinating? Are there certain areas? I'll bet that, Amy, there are certain areas of your life that you don't procrastinate, that you dive right in, and maybe it is the creative side. So I don't know. But in order to take a huge step in this, is you have to, what Brian Tracy says, eat that frog. That's actually a book title, 21 Ways to Stop Procrastinating and do something great. I don't know the subtitle, but the book, you should get it. Go to my Pivotpreneur, the show notes for this, and I'll have a link directly to that book called Eat That Frog. And so basically the idea is you figure out what the worst thing is that you have to do that day, right when you get up, or I prefer the night before. What's like the one thing that's like, oh, I just have to do this. That's called the frog, and you eat that thing first. Get it? It's yucky. Just get it out of the way, and then it just frees you up, and you feel like you're 100% after that, okay? So eat the frog. Figure out what's the one thing you have to do, and just dive in to do it. Okay, finally, we get down to one secret that I have used for 25 years or so. When I feel myself procrastinating, and it's actually part of my Monday morning rituals that I have. And that secret is what I call crack the egg. Okay, crack the egg. You know, when you have a hard-boiled egg, or even a regular egg, a normal egg, it's easier to break an egg and more controlled if you have you crack it just a little bit. You know, what do you do when you break an egg? You crack it on the side of the pan or the pot, and then it opens so much easier and cleaner as well. So here's how that looks in my life. And maybe, Amy, this is helpful for you and those people listening. There was a morning where I just was struggling to get motivated to do anything. I had a lot to do that day, which tends for me to kind of put everything off. I didn't want to do those things, and I was actually making an egg for breakfast, and I realized that that idea, when you crack something, you make a little crack, it's easier to complete that cracking process. So basically, Monday mornings, I crack the egg on something that I need to get done, and here's how that works. So I look at my week, and that works for me. I don't know, maybe it's an event that you're having to do or something coming up. So I look at my week and I determine the most important thing that only I can get done and that I need to get done, and that kind of goes along with Brian Tracy's frog idea. So here's an example. I do public speaking pretty much every week, most weeks more than one time on a variety of topics. And as I'm looking at creating my talk, again, that's the writing piece. That's the concrete thinking piece. There's a rhythm of my week that Monday I crack the egg on that talk that I'm going to give that next week, a few days later, or a couple of weeks from now. So I basically look at the topic I'm assigned, and I just get a couple of things down, just some initial ideas. Sometimes that takes, if it's really a busy day, that cracking process takes 5-10 minutes, and I just carve that out and write something down. Other times I have a little bit more time where I can just really think through an outline of what I'm going to say and put those ideas down on paper. So the benefit for me is that many times my schedule gets interrupted. I know that happens with you. So by cracking the egg, I at least have an idea of a talk that I'm wanting to give, and I get it started. So I suggest over the weekend, take a look at your schedule for the next week. For those of you listening and who struggle with procrastination, at work or at home, projects that you have to do, identify what you're most likely to put off, okay? Figure out one or two things that you can do right away that will help you crack the egg. So let's say I'm going to do a home example. Let's say at home you have just piles of laundry. Your whole family, their laundry baskets are full if they even put their clothes in the laundry baskets. And you just hate doing laundry. You just don't want to do it. So cracking the egg would be, instead of 6 baskets of laundry, just do 1 of the baskets. Or at a minimum, sort the piles, right? If you have to do a presentation at work or for a meeting that you need to prep for, you have to do some initial research or figure out that one thing you want to communicate. That would be cracking the egg. In essence, cracking the egg simply means do something. One step forward is 100 miles than not stepping forward at all, okay? Another tip is just to kind of block it out on your calendar, like a chunk of time. Say, this is the time where I'm going to take that 10 minutes, that half hour to crack the egg. Okay, so give those things a try. It's that cracking the egg has really helped when I have to do something and I really don't feel like I want to. Even if you just do a little bit of that activity, you'll feel like you're moving forward, and mentally, emotionally, it actually subconsciously, it creates momentum for you. Just before we kind of close up, I'm actually going to link to a guy's blog that I follow. His name's Aiden Price, and he has a blog that's aidenpricemotivation.com. I think that's it. I'll link it to the show notes. So go to the show notes, and he has a great article on how to overcome procrastination. Some tips that, in fact, I'm going to look it up real quick. Just kind of take a look. Some tips for those of us who are chronic procrastinators, right? Identify the reasons that you procrastinate, break it down into smaller steps, set deadlines, eliminate distractions, and reward yourself. So if you do crack the egg, reward yourself somehow. Just say, you know what? That was a win. Well, hopefully that has been helpful for you. And to wrap up, I really would love to have you go over to iTunes And I got a couple of ratings for the podcast. If you have a topic or a question that you want me to cover on the podcast, go to pivotpreneur.com. Remember, it's like entrepreneur, but it's pivotpreneur.com, and you can click the contact tab and send me a note there. I'd love to connect with you. If you're needing any coaching at all, or if I can be helpful through my online course, which just came out last month, 5 Steps to Work You Love. Again, just go to pivotpreneur.com or toddstalker.com, and that you'll be able to connect with me there. So again, go ahead and rate the podcast. I would love to have you do that. And just remember, I really enjoy doing this podcast. The writing of it, the scripting, the ideas, like I said in the podcast, not so much. But I love when the concepts come together and I hear back from you that what I've said or what made you think and then act and make your life better. You are why I do this podcast every week. So we will continue to talk about your life, your leadership, and your pursuit of change. So that's it. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.